short video on how we did the animal lip sync for Marmaduke, the Fox feature film, back at Cinesite in 2010. This was a really, really fun film to work on. It came on the back of a number of other talking animal movies that I'd done previously. At Cinesite alone, we had worked on Underdog and then on Beverly Hills Chihuahua. And both of those had been successful movies, particularly Beverly Hills Chihuahua did very, very, very well indeed. And in came Fox with 650 talking dog shots for Marmaduke, and I was offered the chance to do it again, and I thought, well, this could be fun. And although I've done a bunch of these before, it was the same team working with people I really, really liked, and so I jumped at the chance to go back to Cinesite. It was a great company, and I really enjoyed working there. Now, the movie was based on the comic strip. British folks probably don't know this dog so well, but in America he was super popular. 60s, 70s, 80s, Marmaduke was all over the Sunday papers, created by Brad Anderson, and it was single panel gags about a dog who's really, really big because he's a Great Dane. And that was a lot of the jokes in the movie, is about sort of how this kind of big dog kind of creating kind of chaos everywhere he went. And in the story of the film, such as it was the family moved to Orange County, California, and Marmaduke kind of struggles to fit in. And it's a sort of fish out of water story. Had some great voice talent, George Lopez, Owen Wilson, who great to work with. So that was really fun. Now we had to do, obviously there was a bunch of different vendors, as they're called, different visual effects houses working on the show. So there was the thing was headquartered at Fox in LA, but Cinesite, we had by far the largest number of shots to do on the film because we were doing the muzzle replacement, and that was about 650 shots. And I said that was the same team that did Underdog and Beverly Hills Chihuahua, using pretty much the same methodology. Now, I was an animation supervisor on this film, and my job was to give director Tom Day and Fox animation director Chris Bailey a performance that they would be happy with. So to start off, I did all these expression sheets. I'm going to show you a whole bunch. Just frankly, the tip of the iceberg, because I did so many of them, there's way too many to include here. But the idea was to establish the style for the film and make sure that all the dog rigs could produce the kind of maximum range of facial expressions, eye expressions, mouth, tongue, all the rest of it, so that we could give the director everything they wanted in any individual shot. So we were very much in a kind of client relationship. Well, the client was Fox, and we were the vendor doing the work. And it was pretty much, as I said, the same team that worked on the last film, Beverly Hills Chihuahua. So I did loads and loads of these expression sheets. And as with Beverly Hills Chihuahua, the idea was to give the dogs a full range of expressions while still maintaining a photorealistic look. That was the general idea. And particularly Chris Bailey, he would say, I want to believe that the dog is talking. If I believe that the dog is talking, then you've done your job well. Or as other people put it, how would the dogs talk if they really could talk? That was kind of the idea. So very photoreal. So as we did on Underdog and Beverly Hills Chihuahua, we had to build the CG head of all the dogs. So we'd start with LiDAR information. Often that wasn't as accurate as you would hope. But we did. There was a lot of tweaking. You'd start with the LiDAR and then gradually adjust it. Make sure that the dog heads matched exactly the live action dogs, because if it wasn't an exact match, the lip sync would not work, because the whole basis of it was to put a CG head on top of the photography, and then you're then taking the textures from the photography and compositing them back on top of the CG. We did lots and lots of reference. We did a whole shoot. Royston Wilcox, head of CG at Cinesite. We did a photo shoot with various Great Danes. Found some Great Danes in London. Did lots and lots of photography, and got lots of reference for modeling, doing the blend shapes, also the texturing, of course, and then finally the animation. And this was one of the dogs that we filmed out in West London. And gave it peanut butter and got it to do all these different things. It was a really fun day out. Dog lovers are great people to work with. They love the idea that their dogs are helping out in the movies. So it wasn't difficult to find someone who was prepared to help. As with Beverly Hills Chihuahua and Underdog, the idea was to create a muscle system that would mimic as closely as possible the dog's real muscle system, and produce real accurate, blend shapes and mouth shapes. Although, to that extent, on top of that, you've got to be the real muscle system that the actual dog would have, but it's also got to be the human muscle system, because you've got to get the eyes and the eyebrows working, and brows in particular can give a lot of expression, and dogs don't really have eyebrows. Humans do, of course, so we had to add those. So to that extent, it wasn't realistic, but I guess in a way, you're not really looking for realism so much as believability. That was the key. Eye expressions, very, very important. We didn't actually do CG eyes. This was a bit of a bone of contention on the project, because the LA was always asking for different eye expressions, and there was a limit to what we could do with that. Although we could do a lot with the eyebrows. These are some drawings for Marmaduke, of course. So Marmaduke doing different kind of poses, working on the eyes to show what we could do with the eye expressions. Eyes really important. Eyes are the window of the soul. That's what the audience is going to look at. So if you don't get the eyes right, you're in big trouble. We also had to do, of course, lots and lots of phonemes. You know, how would the dogs talk if they could talk? It had to be subtle, it had to be understated, but also there was a bit of a debate within Fox as to how subtle it would be. And this is something I've often experienced working on animated films, is that in the beginning, the director or the animation director or whoever's in charge will say, I want it understated, I want it subtle. And then at some point, the studio head who's actually writing the checks comes in and says, nah, I want it big, I want it bold, I want it in your face, I want it entertaining. And then you have to go back and kind of make it bigger. And this was not the first film I've worked on where that was the case, and I'm sure it won't be the last either. And in fact, the reason I'm going over all of this material is I'm actually on a new film working with DNEG, so I've been going back over the stuff that I did on these previous films to kind of remind myself of the production pipeline, remind myself of what we did last time, and make sure that we can do it even better this time around. But phonemes really, really important for the modelling team. You've got to be able to make the right phonemes. You've got to make them very extreme, and the phonemes have to be very broad, so that you know, if the director comes in and says, I want it to go to 11, you can actually do that. These ooh shapes were particularly tricky, because dogs don't really do this naturally. They only really do it when they howl, and they go ooh, 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 and then they do this ooh shape, which otherwise they don't really do. So you've got to make them howl, which isn't the most easy thing to do when you're shooting the reference. We had some great voices. Steve Coogan played the role of Raisin. It was actually really fun. I got to go to the recording session with him down near his home in Brighton. So I got to do drawings of him doing the voiceover. He was great voiceover, great talent. Here are some expressions for Raisin. Really fun dog to draw, and there were loads of. In fact, I haven't even included all the dogs here because I did so many drawings that it would be ridiculous. I would bore you all to death. This is Maisie, voiced by Emma Stone, formerly called Taffy. That's why there was some name changes during the course of the production. Maisie was originally Taffy, so my original drawings have the name Taffy on them, but she did end up as Maisie. Bosco was actually a different dog altogether. He was I forget the breed, but they ended up with a Doberman because it seemed to be a bit more of a kind of scary dog, because he was a kind of baddie. So one of the challenges on the film was dealing with this kind of lip area. This is quite tricky to deal with, the way the dogs are constructed. There's this kind of fat, and you find this in a lot of dog breeds. How the teeth and the tongue and the kind of skin around the lower lip all work together is quite complicated, quite tricky to get right. So that's Bosco, Kiefer Sutherland. And again, phonemes, you know, how is it going to work? How are the dogs going to talk? And of course, you know, all these dogs are the same, right? Once you get one right, they all basically become, you know, the actual rig itself becomes, you know, you're essentially applying the same rig to each dog. Although it's not, you know, for the blend shapes, it's not so easy because each blend shape has to be custom made. And even if we made the tiniest changes to the base shape of the rig, the blend shapes would all be messed up. So if somebody came in and said, oh, we just need to make a small change to the base shape, that would be a disaster for modeling, because that would be another month back in modeling to get all the blend shapes right, because they would all blow up if the base model was changed. Here's Carlos, voiced by Owen Wilson, another great voice. Carlos was is Marmaduke's sidekick, so I had to do expressions for him, which was really fun because cats are cute. Who doesn't like drawing cats? And all different expressions on Carlos, and also, of course, eyes, because we had to get the eyes right. Eyes are the windows to the soul, and that was super important. And then there were also phonemes, so I did all these phoneme sheets as well. So more Carlos THs, making sure that everybody this stuff is all in the kind of traditional books about animation, THs and R shapes and W shapes and Rs and all of these things that you've got to get right, Ls, Fs, all of these things have to be figured out so that you can make the right shapes, because otherwise the lip sync will feel weird. Something as simple as the tongue not touching the roof of the mouth on an L shape, and it won't feel accurate, it won't feel right, it won't feel believable or realistic. Again, getting those U shapes right, quite tricky. They don't really necessarily feel that natural on an animal, but nonetheless something you've got to get right. One of the things that I was really fortunate, the then head of production, Courtney Vanderslice, gave me some time at the end of the production to do a kind of brain trust. I did a complete wiki, a total breakdown on everything we'd done right, everything we'd done wrong in production. I've no idea if Cinesight still have it. It was really fun to do it. I really enjoyed doing it. I hope it's still there. And it was a tough production, I got to say. And when we did right at the end, we had a t-shirt competition to see who could do a t-shirt. These were my submissions. I forget which one won, or indeed if we even made a t-shirt, because I actually don't have one. So I don't have a t-shirt for any of these. The one on the right, Marmaduke, I'm not even going to try and explain that, but there were some pretty hairy notes on production where we got a lot of notes from LA that weren't necessarily entirely welcome, and that might be where that suggestion for the t-shirt came from. Anyway, I leave the rest to your imagination. As to the result, but Marmaduke didn't do that well at the box office. If you look it up at Rotten Tomatoes, you'll find it was pretty unpopular film in the end. Didn't make a lot of money, wasn't a great success, and that was pretty much the end of doing Talking Dogs at Cinesight. We had a great run, but because of Marmaduke not doing so well, those kind of movies kind of lost favour in Hollywood, and we didn't make any more of them. So that was a shame, because they were really, really fun, and we got super efficient at them at Cinesight. I had a great team. I had a blast working with everyone. So thank you, all of you who I worked with at Cinesight on Marmaduke back in 2009. We had a great time, and I will never forget you guys. You're beautiful.